Her clients paid for her feet pics until I mailed mine instead. I came home that afternoon like I usually did, keys in hand, a little sore from the gym, brain on autopilot, just ready to kick off my shoes and zone out. As I stepped through the door, my eyes went straight to the small stack of padded envelopes sitting neatly on our hallway table. At first glance, I figured they were part of the usual incoming mail, stuff she ordered, maybe some Etsy things she forgot to mention. My wife had been getting more deliveries lately, and I never really questioned it. But today was different. Something about how those envelopes sat there, too neatly, too freshly placed, made me pause. They weren't the usual Amazon packaging or store-labeled bags. They looked deliberate, carefully packed, hand-labeled, no return address. Just first names and P.O. boxes, written in her handwriting. 3 of them, all identical in size, same cream-colored envelope, each sealed tight and precise. I didn't think too hard about it. In fact, I assumed they were ones that had just come in, returns maybe, or wrong deliveries. One of them had a small tear at the top corner, like it had gotten caught in a machine or barely survived a sorting bin. That was my excuse, really. That tear. Just a practical reason to look. To check. I was only going to peek. Just to see what got damaged. But when I opened that first one, what I found wasn't a return. It wasn't anything I could explain away. Inside was a high-quality printed close-up photo of her feet, posed carefully on what looked like the edge of our bed. The detail in the shot was unmistakable. I recognized the little scar near her ankle she got on a hiking trip, the curve of her toes, the light pink polish she always used when summer hit. She was angled just so, like the photo was meant to feel candid, but I could tell it wasn't. It was staged. Clean, almost artistic in its execution, but intimate. Then I noticed the small handwritten note folded underneath the photo. My name wasn't on it, but someone's was. Just for you, Nick. It was followed by a heart and a quick line. Wore these all day, just thinking of you. Packed them just the way you liked XOM. My stomach sank. Because beneath that note, nestled carefully like a souvenir, was a pair of her socks. Her actual socks. Folded in half, slightly stretched at the heel, the ones I'd seen her wear last week. A pair of simple white ankle socks, just used enough to match the message. Not perfume sprayed, not new. These were genuinely worn. I froze. Everything in my brain was trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was for a friend's podcast. Maybe she was helping someone with a weird art project. But the longer I held that envelope in my hands, the less plausible those excuses felt. I slowly put everything back in the same order: photo, note, socks, tucked it in as carefully as I could, sealed the top with a small line of tape where it had opened. Then I picked up the next envelope. The second was addressed to Chris. Same handwriting. Different socks, these were black with little stars on the side. The note was shorter, but even more suggestive, still warm when I packed them. Just like you like it. Again, one glossy photo, new pose. Her legs crossed, soles pointed, toe ring on one foot. She wasn't naked, but somehow this was more personal than any lingerie shot could be. I could feel it in my gut. These weren't sent as a joke or for laughs. These were products. My wife was producing something. Packaging it. Selling it. I looked at the third envelope. Leo. Same deal. Beige socks, the kind she wore around the house. Another soft focus photo, different polish on her toes. A note about how she missed his messages last night and would make it up to him next time. I felt a strange mix of things: rage, confusion, disbelief, but most of all, something hollow. I wasn't shocked by the fact that someone would buy this kind of thing. I was shocked that she was the seller, that she had done all of this with the same calm, organized energy she brought to planning our vacations or hosting dinner for her family, that I had no idea any of it was happening under my nose. And then came the part that made my hands shake, not the contents, but the realization that I wasn't supposed to see any of it. These packages weren't incoming. They were outgoing. These weren't returns or deliveries from strangers. These were the things she was about to mail. I'd mistaken her prepared shipments for mail we had received. That little tear in the first envelope, that was my fault. I had opened her product, her side business, her secret. I shouldn't have known any of this. I could feel it in my chest like a rising pulse of panic. She'd notice if the placement was off, if the fold of the note wasn't exact, if the socks weren't in the same position. I acted fast. One by one, I opened each envelope again and memorized the arrangement. I studied how she folded the socks, once in half, tag tucked under. I traced the edge of each note, making sure it stayed flat. The photos were always face up, but angled just slightly to one side. It was precise, almost ritualistic. She had done this many times before. I could tell by the rhythm of it. It wasn't clumsy or random. It was refined, practiced. I slid each note back under the socks, then smoothed them in place, resealed the flaps, even found a tiny bit of invisible tape to press over the edge I'd accidentally torn. I took a deep breath, laid them back in the exact position I found them on the hallway table, and stepped away. I checked my reflection to make sure I didn't look rattled. The front door opened 2 minutes later. I heard the leash first, that familiar jingle as our dog came bounding in, tongue out and tail swinging. Then her voice followed, light, casual, like nothing was wrong. "Hey babe, we did the long loop this time." Sun finally came out. I smiled without turning. "Nice," I said, swallowing the static in my throat. I could feel her walk past me toward the stairs. Her tote bag swung at her hip, the one she always used for errands. She scooped up the envelopes from the table in one fluid motion without a pause. No hesitation. No clue. She hadn't noticed a thing. Not yet. The next morning, I watched her a little differently. Not obviously. I kept my habits the same, coffee first, quiet scrolling on my phone, the usual half listening as she chatted about the weather and how the dog barked at a plastic bag on the sidewalk. She moved like nothing was out of place. Same breezy smile, same kiss on the cheek before leaving. But now every movement, every word, felt rehearsed. Measured. She wasn't being herself, she was being the version of herself I was meant to see. The real one, I realized, was hiding in padded envelopes. I didn't follow her that day. I needed to be smart. Needed to know more before I acted. So I waited. Let the pieces settle. I started paying closer attention. The tote bag never left her side. She never let me carry it. When she went to the post office, it was always back in a few, but sometimes that few became 45 minutes, even an hour. She claimed the line was long, or that she'd run into someone she knew. On Friday, she said she had to go twice, once in the morning, once in the evening, because she forgot a few things. I nodded, took mental notes. Every little inconsistency added up like clues I didn't know I was collecting until now. The thing is, once you see it, you can't unsee it. The routine, the secrecy, the deliberate quietness around her supposed consulting work. I used to think she was just private about her freelance stuff. But this wasn't privacy. It was performance. Carefully scripted, with just enough detail to keep me from asking the wrong questions. By the weekend, I knew what I had to do. She had a yoga class scheduled Saturday morning, same one she went to every week. 90 minutes long. Just enough time to search without being rushed. I waited until she left, mat in hand, earbuds in, goodbye kiss like always, and then I walked straight to her laptop. It wasn't hard to access. She'd always left it open. Trusted me. Password saved. I sat down and opened the browser. The tabs alone made my heart slow down. 2 were normal Pinterest recipes, a blog on indoor plants. But the third tab was open to a direct messaging platform I didn't recognize. Not a social media site. Something more niche. The header just said, Session Locker. It wasn't a platform I'd seen before. It looked like a hybrid between email and chat, with profiles that only had usernames, no real names or photos. Her handle was something vague but flirtatious, nothing that included her name, but just edgy enough to sound like a tease. I scrolled through the messages, and my breath caught as I saw the threads. There were dozens, each one with a different man. Some conversations were recent, others months old. Some were one-time buyers, some repeat customers. They all followed a similar rhythm, casual chat at first, then requests, then payments. Some paid extra for videos, others just wanted used socks and photos. A few sent her list of poses they liked. Others complimented her on past packages, told her how perfect her soles looked, how they couldn't wait to get the next delivery. One message simply said, "Yours arrived today. Still warm. Unreal." Another said, "Can you wear them longer next time? I'll pay double." I didn't even notice I'd stopped breathing until the pressure in my chest forced a deep, angry exhale. It wasn't just about feet. It was attention, intimacy, fantasy. And she'd been selling it piece by piece. Most of the buyers were polite, weirdly grateful even. Some had usernames that suggested they were married. Others were younger, judging by the way they typed. She played into each one, changed her tone to match theirs. Flirty here, coy there. A performer. A chameleon. And she was good at it. My eyes flicked over to the folders on her desktop. One labeled Invoices, another Prints. I clicked Prints. Inside were dozens of high-res photos. Every kind of foot pose imaginable. Tops, soles, side angles, toes pointed, arches flexed. Most were shot on neutral backgrounds. Our bedspread, the carpet in her office, the kitchen tiles. She'd used lighting tricks to make them look more polished. Every image was named by code. Set_21B, pose_A3, red Polish set 4. Some included her socks neatly folded beside her feet, like a catalog. Others were cropped tightly to avoid showing anything else, just the feet, the toes, the objects near them. I opened one that showed her foot pressing down on a glass surface from above. Artistic, in a way. Precise. Disturbing. I clicked over to Invoices. And that's when the scale of it hit me. There were spreadsheets, monthly breakdowns, client aliases, order numbers, amounts received. Some clients had sent upwards of $300 for a single custom request. Others paid subscription style. Monthly. Regular. A revenue stream. She kept meticulous notes. Product preferences, shipping history, feedback scores. I stared at a column labeled Repeat Tier and saw numbers next to nearly a dozen buyers. 3, 6, 9. That's how many times they'd ordered. This wasn't a hobby. It was a business. A secret business she had built, branded, and managed without saying a word to me. I sat back in the chair, stared at the screen. My reflection in the darkened portion of the monitor looked ghost-like. Pale. Expressionless. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the precision, the effort, the way she'd organized it, like a second life. It wasn't sexual betrayal, not in the traditional sense. But it was betrayal all the same. She'd monetized a piece of herself, created real intimacy with strangers, kept it all hidden behind fake errands and a polished smile. And I'd helped her without knowing it. Picked up printer paper, bought photo ink, drove her to the post office once when her car was in the shop. All of it, unknowingly helping her maintain a lie. That night, I didn't say a word. She talked about a neighbor's new dog, how she wanted to try a new recipe she saw online. I nodded, listened, pretended. Inside, though, I was miles away, planning what came next. Watching her, watching me. I waited 2 more days. 2 more trips to the post office. 2 more times she came home a little too giddy, a little too satisfied. I knew she'd prepped another round of packages. They were on her desk. Same padded envelopes. Different names. I knew what was inside. Another round of photos, socks, notes. Intimacy. Proof. Performance. And I knew what I was going to do next. I waited until the moment was right. Timing mattered. Her routines were tight, but predictable. She left for a hair appointment that Saturday, one she'd rescheduled twice, meaning it would run longer than usual. I watched the car disappear down the road from the window, waited an extra 5 minutes to be sure, then walked straight to her office. The door was cracked open. The scent of lavender and printed paper lingered in the air, that subtle mix of personal calm and machine warmth. Her laptop was closed, charger still plugged in, but I didn't need it this time. What I needed was on the desk. 3 padded envelopes, already addressed, stacked with surgical neatness on the far end of the table. Beside them sat a small pair of folded socks, an open roll of Scotch tape, and a thin folder containing what I assumed would be the next round of notes. Each envelope was labeled in the same handwriting, soft cursive, feminine, slightly slanted, like it had been practiced. 1 for Tyler, 1 for Ben, and 1 for someone just listed as J. No last names, no clues, just her aliases and the men waiting on the other end of a mailbox. I picked one up, gently. I held it under the desk lamp and found the opening seam tucked perfectly under a strip of decorative tape. Nothing loud, just enough to keep it sealed while looking intentional. I peeled it back slowly, careful not to tear the envelope, and removed the contents. Sure enough, a freshly printed photo of her feet, nails painted pale blue this time, with her toes slightly curled, and a folded note on light pink stationery. Tyler, these still smelled like you when I took them off. Hope they make your day better than mine. XOM. And beneath it, the socks. Thin, pink-trimmed ankle socks with a worn-in look, just enough to seem authentic. I laid it all out, memorizing the order. Photo on top, then note, then socks folded once in half, heel tucked under. I took a picture of her arrangement just in case, then carefully slid the contents into a storage folder I'd brought with me. I didn't want to destroy anything, not yet. I wanted her to see it later, to know exactly how much I'd known and how long I'd known it. Then I pulled out my replacement. I prepared it in advance quietly, methodically, without shame. I'd taken photos of my own feet 2 nights earlier, when she was asleep. Nothing seductive about them. In fact, I made sure of it. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, angled the light just so, and took a close-up of my toes, untrimmed, slightly calloused from running, with the dark hair on the tops of my feet visible. I printed it on the same type of glossy paper she used, made sure the size matched, then wrote my own version of her notes, mimicking her tone just enough to confuse her clients, but twisting it with a hint of sarcasm they'd never miss. Still warm when I packed them, just how you like them. I included a tiny heart at the end. Passive. Creepy. Effective. Then came the socks. I'd worn them that morning, specifically to make them smell not disgusting, just off. Masculine. The kind of difference a fetishist would recognize instantly. Different texture. Different scent. I folded them exactly the same way she did. Half fold, heel under toe, label tucked in. Then I laid the new note on top, slid in the photo, and sealed the envelope again. I even pressed the tape down with a warm spoon to keep it from looking tampered. The illusion had to be perfect. They had to look untouched from the outside. I did the same for the next 2 envelopes. Ben got a photo of my feet from a slightly higher angle, shot in front of the baseboard heater. I wrote a note with just enough flirt to stay on brand. These are the ones I wore thinking of you. Let me know if you want them dirty next time. Socks, gray athletic ones I jogged in. Worn. Clearly not feminine. Clearly not hers. Jay received a photo I'd taken with one foot angled toward the camera, the other slightly back, showing the difference in texture and shape. I smeared a little lotion on one toe, just enough to make it shiny, and captioned the note, "A little extra moisture, just for you. XOM." I didn't care if it crossed the line. That was the point. I wanted them disturbed, confused, angry. By the time I resealed the last envelope, my pulse had slowed. Not from guilt, not even from nerves. From control. For the first time since this whole thing started, I had the upper hand. She could send them without knowing a thing. She'd think her business was still intact, still running smoothly. She had no idea I was lacing it with sabotage. I stacked the new envelopes in the exact same order she had placed them, even nudged them into the corner where her shadow had left a faint mark on the desk. I checked the trash to make sure I left nothing behind. No scraps, no tape, no fingerprints out of place. Then I took the originals, carefully filed them away in my gym bag, zipped it shut, and placed it back in the closet. I still had time before she got back, so I double-checked the photos on her desktop, just to make sure the ones I'd replaced weren't going to be referenced later. She didn't label them by client name, just by set. I deleted the 3 she had clearly printed. They matched the envelope count. I dragged them into her recycle bin, then emptied it. Quietly. Permanently. When I heard the garage door open, I slipped out of the office and back into the kitchen, casually pretending to look for snacks. She came in humming, fresh from the salon, hair curled and bouncing as she tossed her keys on the counter. "Hey, did you eat anything yet? I picked up some of those crackers you like." I smiled. Shook my head. "Not yet. Just browsing." She walked past me and into the office. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She didn't look twice at the envelopes. Just scooped them into her tote, zipped it, and walked right back out. "I'm gonna drop these at the post office before they close," she said casually. I nodded. "Want me to come?" I asked, just to test her. She laughed. "Nah, it's a quick stop. You'd be bored." I kissed her forehead as she left, just like I always did. She had no idea what she was delivering. She mailed the packages without a single hitch. That Sunday afternoon, she tossed them in her tote bag like she always did, keys in hand, sunglasses perched on her head, like it was just another casual errand. She kissed me on the cheek, told me she'd be back soon, and left in her usual upbeat rhythm. Post office, then grocery store. "Need anything?" I shook my head. "Nope, we're good." She smiled, turned, and walked out. And just like that, the trap was out of my hands. She drove off with 3 little bombs in her purse, ready to deliver them herself, blissfully unaware that her perfect system had just been hijacked. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. I knew her route. First, the self-service kiosk at the post office. We'd used it together plenty of times before. No line. Just scan, drop, done. Then probably a quick stop at Trader Joe's. I could picture her walking down the snack aisle, humming to herself, thinking she'd nailed another round of orders. I imagined her mentally counting the cash she expected to roll in by week's end. That's the thing about people who think they're clever. They never account for someone else being 2 steps ahead. They always assume silence means ignorance. She came home like nothing was off. Shopping bags in one hand, coffee in the other. She unpacked quickly, chatting about how packed the parking lot was and how the cashier complimented her nails. She was in a good mood, glowing almost. She was proud of herself, of her hustle, of the secret little empire she believed she was still running flawlessly. I asked her what kind of errands she had tomorrow, just to see her reaction. She said she might stop by the print shop after work. Some requests came in, she added casually. The guys are getting more specific lately. It's fun. Fun. That word hit different now. I nodded, pretending to listen, pretending everything was normal. She made dinner, scrolled on her phone, watched a rerun of some comedy show she liked. Nothing seemed off. Yet. But I knew it was coming. I knew that any day now, someone would open one of those envelopes and feel the immediate gut punch of disappointment, confusion, anger. And when they did, they wouldn't stay silent. No, people who paid for the illusion don't take kindly to reality, especially when it arrives clearly not what they were expecting. The next morning, she was still riding the high. She wore her favorite jeans, sprayed perfume before heading out, and even asked if I wanted to grab brunch the following weekend. We haven't had a nice weekend together in a while, she said. I agreed, smiling. Inside, I was still quiet, still cold, watching her play the role of doting wife while I knew what was coming. On Tuesday, the first crack showed. She came home a little earlier than usual. Nothing drastic, maybe 20 minutes before her normal time. But she looked distracted. The smile was there, but it didn't reach her eyes. She hugged me, then checked her phone almost immediately. She paced the kitchen while reheating leftovers, opening the fridge, closing it, opening it again without taking anything out. I asked if she was okay. She said she was just tired. Long day, she mumbled. But her tone didn't match. Something was off. That night she was quieter, less chatty. She sat on the couch with her legs pulled up under her, scrolling through her phone like she was searching for something she couldn't quite find. She didn't laugh at the show, didn't react when I asked if she wanted dessert, just nodded absently, said maybe later. Then she disappeared into the bathroom with her phone in hand. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. When she came out, her face was neutral again, but her body language betrayed her: stiff shoulders, clipped steps, a slight tremble in the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. On Wednesday, it escalated. She didn't speak much at breakfast. She stared at her phone between bites of toast, the screen lighting up every few seconds. I caught a glimpse once, a messaging app, not texts. I recognized the interface. She tilted it away quickly, pretending she was answering a friend. She left earlier than usual, said she had to drop something off. Her voice was tight, rehearsed. She kissed me goodbye, but I felt the tension in her lips. It wasn't affection. It was distraction. That evening, I noticed something else. Her laptop, usually open and running on the counter while she cooked, stayed shut. Not just shut, gone. I found it later, tucked away in her bedroom drawer. That was new. She never hid it. That's how I knew the panic was setting in. She was scrambling, trying to control the damage without letting me see the smoke. But it was already in the walls. Thursday came, and she started overcorrecting. She offered to make breakfast, then dinner. She suggested we go for a walk after, just the two of us. She kept smiling, too wide, too long. I let her play the part. On the outside, I was still calm, still supportive, still acting like nothing had changed. But I could see her unraveling. Every time her phone buzzed, she jumped. Every time I entered a room, she glanced down at her screen before looking up at me, like she was checking whether she'd left something visible. Her laugh was too loud. Her jokes didn't land. She was trying too hard. And the tote bag? It stayed in the closet. For the first time in weeks, she didn't prep new packages. No printing, no sorting socks, no quiet trips to the post office. She stayed home, glued to her screen. Her secret side business was crashing, and she didn't even know why. But I did. I knew exactly what those clients had seen when they opened her envelopes. I knew what they were saying to her. I knew that their confusion had turned to anger. That the same men who had praised her toes and paid for her scent were now threatening to report her, shame her, blacklist her from whatever little underground network she'd been part of. I could picture the expressions they must have worn, the immediate disgust, the betrayal, the laughter, maybe, or the rage. I could imagine them flipping the photo over, hoping for an explanation, and finding none. She had no idea what had gone wrong. No clue that the man she kissed each morning, the man who brought in the groceries and walked the dog and smiled during dinner, had been the one to take a scalpel to her secret life and carve out its foundation. I gave her nothing. No hint. No reaction. I just watched. By the time the weekend rolled back around, I could feel something had shifted for good. The air in the house had taken on a quiet pressure, like the buildup before a thunderstorm. She was still trying to maintain the illusion, still cooking, still asking how my day was, still pretending to scroll aimlessly on her phone. But now, there was a nervous twitch beneath it all. She glanced at her screen too often, checked the hallway when she walked by her own office, opened the fridge only to close it again without taking anything out. Small things, meaningless on their own, but strung together, they told a story. She was unraveling. On Saturday morning, she left the house again under the excuse of needing to get out for some fresh air. No errands this time, no yoga class. Just air. That's what she told me. I was already on the door. I let her go. Watched from the window as she backed out of the driveway, sat in the car for a moment, and finally pulled away. I waited exactly 7 minutes. Then I went to the laptop. It was on the kitchen counter again. She'd been keeping it close all week, rarely leaving it out of sight. I could tell from the battery percentage that it had only been idle for a few minutes. Her screen was dimmed, but not locked. When I opened it, it came back to life like it was waiting for me. The messaging platform was still up. She hadn't even closed the tab. This time the inbox looked different, heavier. Dozens of threads, some bolded with unread messages, others opened but not responded to. All of them carried the same energy. There was no more flirtation, no playfulness in the spacing or tone. The names had changed too. Some clients had added slashes or tags to their usernames. Labels like refund or blocked started showing up. Some had disappeared completely, cleared out, or deleted their profiles. Her clients were angry. They knew something was off. Whether it was the scent, the texture of the socks, the photo inconsistencies, whatever it was, it had broken the illusion she had built so carefully. I couldn't see what they were saying, not in detail, but the volume alone told the story. Short messages, time-stamped close together, some coming in the middle of the night, others only seconds apart. She had tried to respond to some. Her replies were scattered, desperate, often edited, sometimes deleted. But no matter what she said, it wasn't working. The damage was done. Her payment app was open in another tab. I clicked it. Refund requests were rolling in, back to back, from the same names I had seen in the messages. She'd marked some transactions with stars or notes, indicators of repeat customers, big spenders, reliable buyers. Now those very names were associated with reversals, canceled subscriptions, disputes filed. The numbers weren't massive. This wasn't a six-figure business, but it had clearly been steady, consistent, and now it was hemorrhaging. It was clear from the notification bar. One alert after another. Payment canceled. Refund requested. User blocked. All within a span of hours. She couldn't keep up. A file folder on the desktop labeled Orders Active had been moved into the trash. I checked. Inside were print layouts, batch labels, address lists. Organized, time-stamped, categorized by week. Everything was there. She had been planning another shipment. Another wave. But now it was scrapped. The folder had a modified date from just the day before, which meant she'd been going through it, probably deleting what she thought couldn't be saved. Even her browser history gave her away. Searches for dispute resolution platforms, can I get banned for mistaken identity, and niche content refund policy were mixed in between recipe blogs and shopping carts. She had even visited a forum somewhere I didn't recognize, but the tab was still open, filled with anxious posts from anonymous users talking about bad orders, scams, how to tell if a content seller was faking it. She wasn't reading casually. She was researching damage control. There was a document open in her text editor. Just a list. Client names, amounts, short phrases like rescind, and proof needed. One entry simply said, what went wrong? 3 question marks. The kind of note you type when you're grasping at answers. And that's all she had, questions. She didn't know how it had happened. She had no idea it was me. I hadn't left a trail. I hadn't said a word. But her reaction told me she knew the collapse wasn't just bad luck or a printer error. Something had gone wrong that was bigger than a mistake. She had followed every step of her routine, just like always, which meant whatever broke it had to come from inside her own house. Me. I stared at the screen, watching as more alerts came in, new messages, a payment notification followed immediately by a red error. Then another refund demand. The computer beeped quietly as another window refreshed and another cancellation joined the list. She was done. Her business, her secret, her whole identity on that platform shattered. There was no way to walk it back. These clients weren't coming back. They weren't forgiving. She had built her brand on an illusion, and I had made sure they saw reality. A harsh, unmistakable, unmissable reality. The socks didn't belong to her. The feet weren't hers. The lie wasn't subtle. It was insulting. And now they were making her pay for it. I closed the laptop and left everything as I found it. I wanted her to see the damage. I wanted her to open that screen and feel the heat rise in her face as she realized just how far it had all unraveled. I didn't care if she figured out it was me. Not anymore. That night, I pulled my suitcase from the back of the closet. No more preparation. No more planning. It was time. I packed only what I needed: my documents, a few days' worth of clothes, the watch she bought me for our anniversary that I no longer cared to wear. I placed the rest of my things neatly in drawers and bins, not out of courtesy, but out of finality. There was no need to argue about property. I wasn't taking anything that mattered to her. The only thing I was taking was myself. She moved through the house like someone trying not to be heard. She pretended to watch a show on her tablet while picking at dinner. She said she was tired, but I knew she hadn't slept. Her eyes were red. She kept touching her phone screen, tapping it without unlocking it. The behavior of someone waiting for bad news they couldn't stop. She didn't mention the packages. Not yet. But I could see it in her posture, in her expression, in the way her lips stayed pressed together longer than they should. She wanted to ask. Needed to. But she didn't know how. So she cooked. A quiet, calculated effort. She pulled ingredients from the fridge like she was preparing for a holiday. Things she hadn't touched in weeks. She even played music, soft jazz, her fallback when she wanted things to feel special. She moved slower, more carefully, like someone performing, rehearsing her role one last time, hoping I wouldn't notice that the mask was cracked. I sat at the table, waiting for her to say it, to ask the question we both knew was coming. And when she did, I'd be ready. She cooked like it was a peace offering, not just any dinner. She went all out: marinated meat, vegetables grilled just right, that wine she knew I liked but only opened on holidays. She set the table with cloth napkins and lit a candle in the center, the kind of thing we hadn't done in months. She didn't say much while she cooked, just moved around the kitchen with that quiet focus she used to have when trying to perfect a new recipe. Except this time, it wasn't food she was trying to perfect. It was her timing. I watched her in silence. Her back turned to me, her shoulders slightly hunched, tense but composed. She checked her phone every few minutes, pretending to scroll, pretending not to care what was lighting up the screen. I could see it on her face. Every alert, every vibration chipped away at the wall she was trying to hold up. She was crumbling from the inside, but still determined to play one last act. One last scene, where everything would look and sound normal enough to maybe, just maybe, reset the story. We ate together without saying much. She smiled too often, too long. Asked how my day was with a voice that cracked halfway through the sentence. Her hands trembled slightly when she lifted her glass. She wasn't used to being on this side of the lie. Usually, she was the one in control, the one shaping the narrative, leading the game, setting the tempo. But now the rhythm had broken. The audience had turned on her. And she didn't know why. When we finished eating, she cleared the table in silence, then returned with dessert. Something she rarely made. Her hands hovered a moment before setting the plates down, as if unsure whether she should say something first. But she didn't. Not yet. Instead, she sat down across from me, folding her hands on the table like she was bracing for impact. Her breathing was shallow. She opened her mouth once, then closed it. Waited. Stared at me. Tried to smile. Couldn't. Then, finally, came the question. She asked if I had touched the packages she had prepared last week. There was no anger in her voice. No accusation. Just a flatness, like the words had no strength left. Like she'd rehearsed them in her head so many times they lost their shape. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. I looked her in the eye and said yes. That was all. I didn't explain. I didn't justify. I didn't follow it with anything else. I just confirmed what she already knew deep down. That the neat little empire she'd built behind my back had been dismantled by the one person she never expected to fight back. Not with yelling. Not with confrontation. But with silence. With precision. With patience. The color drained from her face. She tried to speak. Her lips moved, but no sound came at first. Then came the excuses. The scrambling. She tried to pivot, to frame it as a temporary thing, a side hustle, something harmless, something about stress or boredom or needing independence. She reached for reasons like someone falling through water, hands flailing for anything solid. But I didn't respond. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. Because I wasn't looking for answers. She had already given me everything I needed the moment I saw what was in those envelopes. So I stood up. She followed me with her eyes, still talking, now desperate. Her voice rose slightly, not in anger, but in fear. Like she knew what was coming. Like she could feel me slipping through her fingers with every second I didn't reply. I walked down the hall, picked up the suitcase I had packed, slipped on my shoes, my jacket. She followed, still talking, still pleading, still trying to find some thread she could pull that would unravel this in reverse. But there wasn't one. Not this time. I paused at the door, not to make a statement, not to offer closure, just to take one last look at the woman who had smiled at me each morning while sealing little lies into padded envelopes. She was crying now, not dramatically, not the kind that begs for forgiveness, the quiet kind, the kind that comes when you realize a door is closing and you're the one who locked it from the inside without even knowing. I opened the door. The night air hit me like a reset. Cool, still, indifferent. I stepped outside, closed it behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't say goodbye. I just walked away. Let her sit in the wreckage. Let her think about every message she couldn't unsend, every refund she couldn't reverse, every lie she mailed out and got back marked, returned to sender. Let her clients remember the day the fantasy ended not with fire or scandal, but with a single photo that made them see her for what she really was. And let her sit with the fact that in the end, I didn't raise my voice. I just raised the mirror. Was it worth it to send your legs to ruin not only your marriage but also your business?